Hi, welcome back to this Wwise and FMOD comparison video series. In this video we're going to be looking at how to implement dynamic footsteps within Wwise and how we can implement them in the Unreal Engine. We're going to be using two different surface types, stone and snow, and we're going to be changing in between them using triggers. So first off, let's make our footsteps within Wwise. Moving on from where we left off last time during the integration video, we'll just go ahead and delete what we put into the last video because we don't need that anymore. We'll delete the event from the sound bank and we'll delete the event itself, and we'll also delete the audio. Okay, so let's start afresh. Go to the default work unit, and this time we're going to create a switch container. Because within this container we're going to change between different surfaces. And we'll call it surface switch. Why not? Within here we're going to create two extra containers. One is going to be stone, and one is going to be snow. Okay, so that's them. Obviously they contain multiple samples, that's why we're using containers for this. If we drag in some samples, so we'll use deep snow and we'll drag it into the snow container, hit import and import again, there we go, so there and there. And we'll also grab our stone samples. There we go, drag those in and they are in stone. Click snow and press F5 to go to the designer layout. And you listen to them and listen to stone. Sounds lovely. Right. To go along with these switchable footsteps, we'll also use some unswitchable sounds. So we're going to add another couple of containers. The first one we're going to call scrapes for some body scrapes, and the second one we're going to be calling motors. These are the extra sounds that go with the footsteps. So we'll drag these in. We'll take motors, drag in motors, and we'll take scrapes and drag in scrapes. There they are. Right. So we'll listen to our scrapes. They sound like that. And our motors sound like that. So now we have these, we're going to put them into a one event. We'll take the non-switchable motors and scrape sounds and the surface switch group and put them into one event. Okay, and we'll call this event footsteps. And that appears in the event viewer. And if we click it, you won't hear the foot impacts because we haven't set up a switch group in the Game Syncs tab. So go to Game Syncs and create a new switch group under default work unit. And we'll just call this surface switch. Now within this switch group, we're going to need individual switches. So if you click it and create a new switch within the switch group, we'll call it stone. And we'll create another one for snow. And we have two switches within our switch group, as you can see there. Now all we need to do is apply audio to these switch groups. So go back to audio and click on the switch group and go over to group, change that to our surface switch group and select that. And we'll also make the default state stone, just so whenever it spawns, it will be on stone, no matter what you've collided with. Next thing you need to do is assign the actual objects to each of these switches. So we'll just drag stone into stone and we'll put snow in snow. Great. Back to our events, let's have a look at the footsteps. This event obviously contains these audio assets, the stone and snow, along with the motors and scrapes. Just click the event down the bottom left and hit play. Now let's try out stone. So we're going to want to change the properties of each of these pieces of sound to make them sound a little bit more dynamic. So let's click over to stone and adjust this a little bit. So it sounds like that. We can just automate the pitch. And we'll automate it between -70 and +70 cents. Okay, let's play that. A little bit more variation there. I think we'll automate the volume a little bit as well, just -3 and 3. Okay, that sounds a little bit more random. It's just a very common way of varying limited samples, so they sound different. We'll do the same for snow. -70 and 70. And we'll randomize the volume as well. Let's click on motors. We won't change the pitch for this. I'll tell you what we'll do is we'll go back and play our event and see what it sounds like. Okay, you'll notice that the motors and the scrapes are a little bit too loud there compared to the impact. So we'll just bring those down a little bit. You can also do that up here. Play that. Oh, click the event, play it. Okay, that's a little better. One thing we can do is just delay the scrapes and the motor sounds just so they come after the impact sound, and it will sound a little bit more like somebody moving around. So if we go over to the right hand side here, click on scrapes and go over to the right hand side, we'll just change it to 0.05. And you can also randomize it, but we won't do that. And let's just change motors as well to, let's try 0.04. Let's see what it sounds like. Okay, that's a bit better. It's a little better, but we might extend the time on that a touch. Let's go 0.12. Okay, switch over to snow. Right, now let's assign this event to our sound bank. Click on sound banks and go to our master. Now just drag our event into the editor. Okay, so we'll generate now. And that will push over that sound bank into Unreal so we can generate it in Unreal, and that will pick up the events and sounds that we've added. So let's go over to Unreal and we'll just delete what we put in there last time, which is in events. Delete that, that was our foot test. And now we'll add what we've just created. And there it is, footsteps. So we'll drag that in. And we'll assign it to the master bank. Save and close that down. So you may remember if you watched the FMOD video that we actually changed footsteps depending on the surface that the character was standing on. And we did that by adding surface types in the project settings under physics. And we added stone and snow. And then we, inside the animations blueprint, if I just come back to the animations blueprint, we added a line trace down and detected the surface underneath and switched surface type depending on that. We'll do it slightly different this time. Let's just go to the animation tab, and inside the animation loop, we will add our notify event. And at a certain point, we're going to add audio kinetic event. And we'll associate this event with the footsteps which you just created. So the event's already found in there, and now that should trigger the sample at the right time. We'll put another one there. Perfect. And assign that to footsteps. You'll notice that you can't actually hear the sample in this page, whereas normally you could. And the reason for that is that we haven't actually generated the bank. So we'll just save that and go to build and generate sound banks. Now if we check back in our animation, you should actually be able to hear the sample. There they are. So that works fine. It's triggering at just about right the time. In fact, if you can move the timeline at the bottom, and that sounds about right. If we had a bit more time, we'd go into each of these animations individually and add notifies to them, but to save some time for this video, we won't bother. Okay, let's save and close that down. And you'll notice in our scene that before we had the line trace going down and we were detecting the surface on the snow and switching on snow. In this case, we're going to add trigger boxes to switch the sound at certain points when the character walks into a trigger box. We can do that by just searching trigger, and we'll put in a box trigger. Change the size a little bit, just so it's roughly the same size as this snow block. There are obvious downsides to this approach. It's not as exact as applying a surface type to a certain texture, but it'll be quite nice to demonstrate it anyway for the purpose of this video. I'll link you to a blueprint that will enable you to change footsteps depending on surface type with Wwise, but for this case, we'll just use this box. Put it roughly in position, and then we'll add a blueprint to this trigger box. You'll see it at top right. If you've accidentally unclicked it, then you can just search in the search box and it will come up. There we go, and click blueprint. And create it wherever you like. I'll just create it there for now. And if you click on your box in this screen and scroll down, you'll see all of the different events that you can add, and they'll appear on the graph when you click them. So let's go over to the event graph, and here we are. So the first thing we want to do is change the footsteps whenever the character overlaps the box, and we'll change it to snow. So let's cast this to our third person character. Then we will get our player pawn and put that in. Move that out of the way. We want that associated with this third person character object. Drag that into object. Tidy it up. Okay, next up, we need to get the characters mesh. So we drag this out, type in mesh, put that in. And we want to get the audio kinetic component. Let's connect these up. Tidy it up a touch. Okay, perfect. Our return value is going to be switch. And this is our switch. Inside here, we're going to have our switch group and switch state, which we saw in Wwise. We should have it set up exactly the same. So if we switch back and have a look. So we've got surface switch and then stone and snow. Okay, so that's what we want to put in here. So in this case, when he overlaps, we want surface switch and snow. That's on overlap. So when the character leaves the box, we have nothing moving it back to stone. So this bit of the blueprint is obviously changing it to snow when we overlap with the box. And now we need to make one when we don't overlap to change it back to stone. So what we obviously want to do is get the actor end overlap event. Type that in and take that. And then we're going to use exactly the same from above and just copy and paste. And attach it to the same one. And then attach end overlap to that one. And then for the switch, we want to switch it back to stone. Let's compile and save and see if it worked. Let's play the game. So there's our stone footsteps. Obviously there's no samples at the moment on the other animations, and the change works. Obviously some of the animation points there aren't triggering a sound, but don't worry about that, it's just on run. And then we go, it changes back. So that's working fine. Obviously there's major drawbacks to a box trigger like this because there's so many other surface types around, it would be an absolute nightmare putting boxes about on each of these sections. But that doesn't reflect on how Wwise works, that's just an implementation method in Unreal. So that's it for this video. We've had a look at how we can implement footsteps in Wwise and how we can apply them to animations in Unreal. In the next video, we're going to be looking at how to add atmosphere and ambience to this scene using Wwise, so we can put a little bit of life into this world. You can either jump straight over to that video, or you can go over to the FMOD video and compare how footsteps apply with that piece of software.